and good evening, and welcome to round 4 of the GUDC 2023 tournament. We encourage that you engage yourself in all BP rules, and let's have an engaging round. My name is Crying Edmond Amponsa. I'll be your chair for the round. With me are...
My name is Daniela.
Abdul Samid.
Right, so thank you very much. The motion reads: this House believes that India should abandon its foreign policy on non-alignment. The House now recognizes the Prime Minister to open up the debate for the government bench. Ready when you are, sir.
Hello. All right. All right. I start now. This House believes that India should abandon its foreign policy. A number of things. First, characterization on status quo and how the current situation look like. One, a world with economic recession. There is inflation in most countries all over the world. There is economic hardship and citizens are suffering. Why is that true? It's true on two fronts. One, the advancement of COVID-19 and its impact that it has had on economies all over the world. But two, the existence of war. We have Russia-Ukraine fighting, interrupting supply chain, etc. Now, Israel and Hamas are also fighting in the Middle East. We think all these things contribute some economic harms. Second characterization. In most recent time, there has been a threat against stability and security in the world. There are two examples. One, in Europe, how there was a blown-out war fighting in the soil of Ukraine is something that we are against. I've already pointed how Hamas is also entrenching themselves in the Middle East, etc. There is a characterization of instability and security threats. But finally, we think it is tied largely around Hamas in the Middle East, the existence of terrorism and how it threatens global security, global peace and order. These are important characterizations in today's debate. Moving forward, what is the problem that we seek to address? We think the large problem is instability in global trends. A lot of things are being shaken. Powers are being pushed back, and we think that there are things that we should take note. Why do those problems arise? Two levels of things. One, interruption in supply chain and how things are going in terms of deals that people are cutting, and the inability of existence groups like the United Nations and some economic blocs to act effectively. How US and other international actors are taking their own interests first and putting the interests of the global stability second. But thirdly, we think that there is existence of a threat against global peace and stability, and it's something that is a problem in today's debates. Who are the main actors in today's debate? One, we have India, the government and its citizens. Secondly, we have major power blocs, i.e. we have the West and its allies, UK, European Union, and all those guys. We have the East, China, we have Russia, and all those guys. But lastly, we have the Gulf countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and those guys who are enjoying on the back of oil money and flourishing tourism in that particular regard. Some preemptive rebuttal. We think that there's no moral justification in our motions, right? We think that morality is something that is absurd and arbitrary for us to debate in that particular regard. But secondly, we think that we are not here to prove which of the blocks that these guys are going to align to. It is in their own interest to choose how they drop that foreign policy. What they will do with it is with them. What UP is supposed to defend? UP is supposed to show why India should continue to hold on to this foreign policy, even if I prove to you how these things are bad for them to hang on to. The nature of the economic bloc. We think that economic bloc largely have incentives for you to join, right? They join powers, they join economies, they join their common markets in 3 key areas. Area number 1, trade, in terms of imports and exports. They join powers in second area like funding. They provide themselves some financial incentives, some financial support, setting up monetary funds and setting up certain development banks for them to inject the economy with money and funds, etc. Lastly, they also coagulate and form power around security and protection. They invest in military, in security, in technology that will protect their interests and all those things. We think that these are 3 key areas where major power blocks coagulate their resources towards, right? Before I continue, yes, closing.
You agree that non-alliances are different from other forms of cooperation?
All right. So, panel, if that's the argument that they are going to run, it clearly states in the info slide what those non-alliances mean. I'll get to the nature of the non-alliance and they will see what it looks like. Now, to the nature of India. We think that India is one that has large population and individuals to cater for. But secondly, there exists inequality and developmental gap in their economy, right? But thirdly, they have resources, natural resources like trees, like forest reserves and etc. They have human resources, expertise in tech.
Hello? Okay. So, I begin in 3, 2, 1. Panel, understand this, that in today's debate, we have to analyze the situation of the world. Understand that the world is in a high crisis right now and world powers are fighting against each other, right? In this situation, India is the best thing for India is to stay on its own and not align with itself, because all the benefits that these people are giving about trade, binding the trade routes, increasing the binding trade routes and increasing contracts with them and all of that, they already exist on our side because we work on the principle of give and take, right? When India is exporting to somebody, they also import, right? So they both need each other. The external powers, be it the West, Russia, China, anybody, they already depend on each other, right? So there is no incentive to none of them have any incentive to fight against each other already, right? So that is why OG's impacts are not exclusive, right? For them to win, they have to show exclusive impacts as to why it will be important, right? But then let's analyze India's situation in today's debate, right? These people say that India is in shambles, right? Because of 1, COVID, 2, Ukraine-Russia war, Israel-Palestine war, right? Understand that these 2 wars that exist, India is not part of it because already it has not aligned itself with any of the institutions, right? Any of the countries. So it is not affected by any of them, right? But then when it comes to COVID, panel, understand, COVID was 4 years ago, right? Big economies like India have already been able to overcome it. You can't come and run this in today's debate. But the third biggest proof that India's economy is really good on its own is that because recently they were able to send a space shuttle to the moon, and it was very successfully landed, right? So OG's frame is completely false. Don't buy it. Then what exactly formally aligning yourself looks like, right? It means that having allies, right? Having allies. 2, military protection, and 3, support in IR discussion. But what it does not look like is basically trade, traveling, speaking about international affairs of the and what it looks like is that you're not allowed to speak in international affairs of a specific country, right? This is what this is not what it looks like, right? The proof is basically because they've literally been having trade and traveling all over the world already, right? But the second thing is on isolationism, right? That is basically that no country can live on isolation. That means trade and traveling is always going to exist, right? So that means in their world already all of these things are good, but what we are against is military protection, we supporting other people in IR relations and having allies, right? What is the nature of the world looks like? A lot of countries that trade with India are not in line with each other. That is to say that India will have to cut off trade with all these countries, trades in China, if India sides with the West, they will have to cut off trades with India, they will have to cut off trades with China, which is bad for India, or if they allied with the other side, they will have to cut off trades with West, which is very bad for India. So India will lose more. India will lose buy-ins in one way, right? But the worst will be the countries that are depending on the exports of India will also be hurt, right? What does India look like? Basically, it's a country that has nuclear weapons, a powerful country in terms of economics, politics, and military, right? We can't have another superpower as residents of Earth to destroy the Earth and to have another superpower taking part in the war, right? More countries, there will be more chaos in the world, more countries will be unstable, and we can't ask India, another superpower, to join the war as it stands now in the world, right? Now, understand that there exists this distrust. I'll take you in my 5th minute. There exists this distrust of distrust of the West by India because they were colonized by the West, right? That means that our country is never safe with another country, especially when they colonized you at a point in time, right? That means that if the world, it would never align itself with the Western world, because then it can't align itself with the Western world because they once colonized themselves, right? But then it won't align itself with Russia or China either, because then they're part of the Commonwealth. They will lose out the benefit that they get from the Commonwealth at the end of the day, right? This does not mean that understand that joining Commonwealth or UN and all of these things are very different from aligning yourself politically with another country. So I don't expect any of the government teams to come and say that, oh, at the end of the day, when you are part of an international organization, you align yourself with a country. That is not how it works, right? It's based on military power and voting against another country, right? Before that, I will take. It has literally joined BRICS. It has its own currency. It is joining BRICS. It is planning on having its own currency in which they are going to trade instead of dollars. It's growing. The economy is growing very, very well, right? Why alignment is not necessary, right? One, they already have good trade relationships, right? Import, export exists. They have good contracts. When you take one side, you lose on this, right? But then they have better deals with China, Russia, and America by diplomacy. That is on the principle of give and take that I've already shown you, right? Other states are dependent. Another point is that other states, other countries like African countries are very, very dependent on exports from India, right? That's why you see a lot of Indians having their businesses in Ghana. There are a lot of food imports that are made in Ghana by India, right? That means that you will lose when you align yourself with one side, you will lose on all of these exports that you are making, right? People will stop patronizing you, right? Now, why is it bad, right? For India, basically, it loses its benefits. That is one, trade benefits, but then two, it won't be able to manage its own internal affairs either. If they align with West will enforce their decisions on them. If they align with the other side will impose their affairs with the other side will impose their decisions on them, right? The second impact is that in their world becomes more chaotic instead of becoming more peaceful, because we are forcing India to go and join war again, right? But then the countries that are depending on India will also suffer on the long run, right? We've given you impacts why exactly their world is way worse than ours. We think status quo is way better, and India is doing a perfect job in maintaining and growing its economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader of Opposition. The House recognizes the Deputy Prime Minister. Ready when you are, sir.
Okay. All right, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Terrorism is a pandemic that needs to be solved. It has penetrated and ripped off the dignity of African countries like Niger, etc. It is essential that you make a very potent alliance in order for you to save yourself from this. My Prime Minister characterized you the current world that we are living in. That looks like there has been an insurgence of terrorism in African countries, in the Sahel. It has ripped off African countries, and then now they are seeking the alternative of bringing the Russian military for them to be able to help them. We see that Hamas has also conquered, like has sent a rocket to Israel in order for them to do conflict in that regard. We think this is a problem because we feel that blocks work in a certain way. When you are working on your own, those things are very different. How does this look like? We think that non-alliance looks like, one, less incentives for other countries to engage you when you are in this mess. How does this look like? We feel that when you are in a mess like Russia-Ukraine war, the only reason why United States of America should be able to jeopardize and trade off and send money for Ukraine to be able to fight off like Russia is when Ukraine, right, is part of an alliance with United States of America. In that case, one, there is loyalty for them to be able to know that when you are with me, I should be able to also make a trade-off in order for you to serve you, right? Secondly, we think that if they don't do that, the active harm is that when India and those other countries involve themselves in war, I've already characterized you how that is likely to happen because you've seen the insurgence of these things, right? When that happens, we think that you don't get, one, the loyalty from other countries to be able to help you. In their world, you are on your own. You have your own military might. You have your own like IT technology and all of those things. We think this is not enough. Why is this true? This is true because we think that Russia is even a big body. They are fighting with Ukraine. Russia has a very mighty military, but in instances, well, there happened a time where Russia was likely to lose the war because United States of America was providing weapons and other things for Ukraine to be able to defend themselves. What this means is that when you are to liberate and emancipate yourself when you're in crisis, proudly, OG.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. The House recognizes Leader of Opposition. Ready when you are, Madam.
Yeah, a moment to set my timer and gather my sheets. Okay, a few things before I start my speech. I would take my POIs ideally in the 5th minute, but if you feel the need to ask a POI before that, please just raise your hand. You don't need to interject. I will see you from where I'm standing and I will take you. I will particularly prioritize one from closing. Okay. That being said, I begin my speech In 3, 2, 1. Panel. The motion states that we believe that India should abandon its foreign policy. To the extent that a state is to abandon a policy that it has used for entire decades, approaching a century, there must be an extent to which you can prove that that policy has failed in the past, and now we do not want it. OG doesn't do that, automatically falls in today's debate. The best they say, right, is that there is the tipping point. There are wars in Russia and Ukraine, and there is COVID. We say India has been non-aligned through the Spanish influenza and has been non-aligned through wars and has survived. Your agency is not urgent. Automatically fourth. Again, OG agrees to the benefits of trade that India currently enjoys and says that they want more. Panel, Adia analyzes to you in her speech how truly there is not more, but there is a net loss. Because once you align with certain countries, it means that you do not align with other countries. What that means is that you lose some stuff. What this looks like is status quo. India is currently enjoying the best of both worlds. Once they align, they lose half of the world. You do not get more. There is a net loss. They don't understand how mathematics works. Automatically fourth. On terrorism, they say that these African states and Iraq are having some conflicts, and that India needs to find an alliance, because once there's those attacks, right, then you get help. Two responses to this. One, they do not even prove how there's this magical, hypothetical, external threat, because at this moment, India does not have any such threat. But secondly, right, we prove to you why the situations in these African countries in Iraq are worse off because of Western intervention. A clear example, a typical example is Israel, where now there is a war because of the Western's interference when they tried to form demarcations in the land in Palestine and India. They made it worse off. They started a war to the extent that alignments, these African countries were aligned with them, therefore necessitating the West to feel like they had the right to pass laws in their land, right? That necessitated the war. We think that India doesn't want such a situation. We do not want your help. Take that pseudo help, right? So, what then are our cases, right? We analyze to you what status quo looks like. India is one of the most sovereign nations in the world. We are going to analyze to you why sovereignty is important, right? But what qualifies sovereignty? One, exclusive monopoly of legitimate use of force in a territory and control of domestic affairs. This is something that states that are aligned, i.e. Israel, i.e. Iraq, i.e. African countries who have the West and other blocs interrupting at any point, always causing more problems, do not enjoy. India is sovereign, which we say that other nations are sovereign in theory. India is sovereign in practice. Why is this important? Because of trade. In Alia's speech, she analyzes to you how non-alignment means things like allyship, military intervention, and does not include trade, because currently no nation can live in isolationism, right? There's a desired profit, there's a desired consumerism. We need that, we need each other, and in status quo, we have each other already. Do not let any government team come to lie to you that India does not enjoy trade currently, right? So, if we can trade with any nation, why would we trade this off for the worst case, right? What we get is military interventions that's worse in our world and losing some trade. It does not make sense mathematically. We do not need that for the actors and the stakeholders, primarily India, right? Two, why it is important that India, I'll take you in my 50 minutes, why it's important that India remains non-aligned, right? It means that they can solve the internal conflicts by themselves. Why this is true? Because they do not interfere in your business. Therefore, simply, other countries cannot interfere with them. We agree that nations internally and externally have some sort of we always have some sort of back and forth, right? We believe that to the extent that India is able to maintain its sovereignty and not get worse because of pseudo help that actually makes the situation worse, they are legitimate to stay unaligned, right? Why is this important? Because I've already analyzed everywhere these superpowers have helped you, they've made it worse. India is wise. They do not want to buy into that in my 5th minute. 4. So what alignment looks like, right? It means that there's a lack of choice, right? Because largely, once you opt into one world, you are not going to say, oh, today I align with the West, tomorrow Russia and China are my friends. You cannot switch those sides. We think that is very bad, right? Today, India can decide that the countries that profits me most in trade and tourism are in Russia, right? Tomorrow, they can decide that who profits me most is the West, and I'll prioritize that engagement. They can do that. It's the best for them, right? Why, and What alignment then looks like, moreover, is like alignment of ideologies. Why this is problematic is that India has its own set of cultural views and beliefs that will be infringed upon when they align with other nations. Why shouldn't India do this? Because then they do not need to compromise their sovereignty, right? 2, Aya tells you why they distrust other countries. We tell you this is the principle of grim triggers, right? It means that a nation only cooperates with another if there's been no distrust in the past. There will always be begging the question of at what point will the cooperation fail? Which means that if they get aligned, right, that's gross mistrust that has led India to remain unaligned for so long is going to continue, is going to cause distrust. Those alignments are likely to fail. Closing, do you have a POI for me?
You know that India has currently conflicts ongoing with China at their borders.
Panel, listen. India has conflicts with another state. Notice how they are able to maintain their sovereignty and solve those issues. We are not saying that we have a utopia where nobody has problems. We are saying that in a status quo where we notice that help from other countries, typically, we've given you several examples, right? Typically worsen situations, then they are legitimized to fight this war, and at the point where they reach a stalemate, at the point where there's mutually assured destruction, right? They reach the end of that war to the extent that they maintain their sovereignty. If they win, they win. If they lose, they lose, but they maintain integrity as a nation. We think that they prioritize that, right? Panel, what have we brought to you today, right? We've largely engaged OG's cases. The summary of our cases: we do not need the external alignment, right? To the extent that we enjoy a lot of benefits from them without getting the harms that you get from other aligned nations. What this looks like when you align yourself is that now you are co-opted. The impact on India, right, when they align themselves is that they are taken advantage of, because we all agree they have a great economy, they have a lot of numbers. What this looks like is people prey upon them to put them in wars, in standoffs that they have no business fighting. We don't think that the people of India want that. We do not opt into that on any day. Panel, at the end of the day, this is a policy that has been in enactment for so long. Why should we abandon this? They do not tell us how there have been harms in the past that are recurring in the status quo, therefore they lose. Vote O.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader of Opposition. The House recognizes the Member of Government.
Okay, so beginning now. Okay, so panel, first thing that OO tells you is that India already has people they traded. Panel, we say in these cases, most of the time, they are being exploited by both sides, because no side in the first place has vulnerable interest in them, because you really do not align to most of their ideologies and you do not give them any benefits in the end. Most of the times when states are doing IR policies with other states, they prioritize themselves. In a world where you do not hold any of their interests, most of the time they just do these things to exploit them. So the leader of opposition tells you, oh, that India has joined BRICS. We think this is just another tokenistic additions just for them to be exploited due to the natural resources that they themselves tell you that they have. We think even here in Africa, we face the same problems. We think we are Ghanaians, we know the kinds of things that are happening. Our natural resources are taken away because they really do not have any vulnerable interest in us. In the end, we get very little for these natural resources, right? She tells you that no state can exist alone. We think it's why India has to choose one side, prioritize that side, and increase and tighten their trade with them, because we show you why a net negative exists on their side when you try to play both sides, right? Because in the end, no side really cares about you that much. They invest very much less in you. It's a new matter that you get from us, right? So they tell you, oh, they won't align with the West because of colonization, right? And then go on to tell you from that same person that they already get some help from Commonwealth. We think there already exists a level of interaction between these people. We think they should intensify it. We'll show you why they should choose that side in the first place. Because notice, India needs protection. The sovereignty that they preach to you is a very good thing about, right? It's something that is currently being threatened. We think it makes it all the more important after the characterization that is debated by the opening house about how the world looks very unstable currently. We think India itself, right, has conflicts with China along the borders of Ladakh and Xinjiang, right? We think in a world where these conflicts can flare up due to the instability that's going on all around the world. It started with Russia, Ukraine, then Nagorno-Karabakh flared up. Now Israel's own has flared up. We think it's only a matter of time to the point where these things can flare up and this considerable damage is more likely to happen in our world. We think India needs this protection much more than ever. We think we proved a very huge tipping point to you, right? Panel. So apart from their sovereignty, which they say is a benefit in their world being threatened, I'll take you my 5th minute, right? What is India's current state? Because they tell you this thing is the best ever, because notice it's status quo. It's the policy they are applying now. It's the best ever, and it has brought India to a place of actualization. Panel, India has the highest population of poor people that exist in the world. You'd say it's because of their numbers. Compare it to a place like China. They are actually the most populous state in the world, only seconded by India. But they have a very huge population of rich people because they focus on themselves, created an economic bloc that they have thrived in. We think India trying to play both sides is the reason why they are still stuck on things like natural resources, extraction, etc. That is why they still have the highest population of poor people existing in these states, right? It's like India has very few rich people, they own the billions, all the rest of them are very poor. We think if any state needs more trade, if any state needs more investment in their side, right, it's India, because they have a lot more people who have to make it and actualize, right? We think in a world where you try and do non-alignment, you get less trade from both sides. There's no net negative. Because they think they eat from both sides, there's a net negative. There isn't, because no side prioritizes you. In the end, what you get is the smaller thing. Because when you move to the West, they will focus more on the people who are closer to them, with the people who align with their ideologies. Like Israel is right now in a war, and the US is literally sending it aircraft carriers, right? We think they'll focus more on these people. China will focus more on Russia. In their world, you get very small things from both sides. It's not enough. It's why still India is suffering. You can't tell us that India has launched a space shuttle, so they are doing fine. Even Ghana launched the satellites last year. We all know that we are still suffering. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove anything, honestly, because it doesn't impact to you why the launching of that satellite. Because it's actually one of the cheapest satellites to have ever existed. It costs less than most space movies that are being made. We think it's not something that proves economic emancipation. I'll take you my faith, right? But now, so the non-alignment, it looks like aligning with no sides vulnerably to protect their interest. So what does it look like? What does it impact, right? But no, we think in the end, there is less investment from each side because none of them has an active interest in you emancipating, right? We think in a world where they are still able to get the natural resources that they need from you because you don't align to each side and you do not protect any of their interest, right? Both of them just give you anything you want, they want, because you want to sell, you still give it to them, right? We think like you just increase India's resource scarce, you just worsen it. We think it's a net negative on their side, right? No, we think that, notice, India already has existing conflicts with China along its borders, right? In a world where their sovereignty is being threatened, right? We think that they need the Western support more for when these flare-ups happen, because I've already showed to you from the argumentation that these people make that flare-ups are continuing and progressing all over the world. Even just in 2020, right, there was a flare-up between India and China where 8 Indian soldiers died. They weren't able to retaliate because China is a much more bigger military power, right? We think in a world where you are up against a much more bigger military power, then you need a bigger bloc behind you. In their world, that's another reason why that side too is going to give you very less, because Russia, who is the leader of the East, is in war. China, who is the leader of the East, does not like you as much. You think in their world you get very little from them. Go to the people who are already giving you, take more from them. I'll take closing.
What is the case you are trying to make? It's like you are only arguing harms.
Exactly, because your burden is to tell us why status quo is better than the new model that we are proposing, because currently that's what India is proposing. We think that's the motion come and argue it out. Yeah. But no, and the other thing, they can't align to people like the Muslims, because notice that India has a Muslim population that they infringe upon their rights a lot. Like you can literally look up this up, right? So they can't align with people like the Muslim states, right? We think the only option they have is to go with these people, because notice the Muslims don't support them. It shows how they give them very less. China already, which is the leader of the East, is not one that supports them. It shows why they give very less. But no, we think we beat our opening and both opening things, because we bring the debates to you in real life. We show you the existent harms that exist, the need for India to do this. We think we beat both opening sides, right? Because we show you that India needs this much more than anything that they tell you, because there's an existent harm, there's the existent possibility of these wars flaring up. Panel, we think India has to protect itself like what Taiwan has done. Taiwan doesn't have a big military, but China is still afraid to go against it because they have aligned themselves very strongly with the US. They know if they get attacked, there's mutually assured destruction, because the US is going to stand up for them. In a world where you don't have this bloc behind you, we think you are more open to attack. The Soviets and everything they preach to you is something that you look very proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Member of Government. The House recognizes the Member of Opposition.
I begin in 3, 2, 1. Panel, the motion for today's debate is, this House believes that India should abandon its foreign policy of non-alignment. A brief characterization. Formal alignment. What is a formal alignment? It is the agreement or formal agreement signed by an act or treaty. This means that if a country forms an alliance, they are bounded by treaties in relation with what they can do or cannot do at a certain point in time here. Non-alignment is when a country is not committed to any particular country, right? Panel notes, alignment and cooperation are two different things. This means that person can align and still cooperate, and cannot align and still cooperate. Status quo shows that India is cooperating with countries even though they are not aligned with any country. Panel, over the years, we have seen how alliances have caused a lot of issues with countries. Take for an example, the World War I was caused because countries like Germany was aligned with Austria-Hungary, and when it first came, it generated the World War II, going down to proxy wars, where countries use alliance to fight for them indirectly. These countries have experienced the effects of wars and conflicts. We do not want that for India. This means that if India stands on its own, it doesn't necessarily have to be fighting for wars for countries here. Panel, the whole case built on this government bench is that India needs protection. That conflict is happening with China and they need Western countries to step in. Panel, we are telling you that even if they don't align with these countries still have an incentive to help India. Why is that true? We tell you that, one, they derive great benefits from India. What are some of the benefits? One, human resources. India produces some of the best tech guys in the country. These are all incentives as to why these Western countries, if India should go into war right now, have an incentive to help them. Two, India has a lot of natural resources of which these Western countries still benefit. This means that whether they align with them or not, if something bad happens to India, they get that incentive to help them. Because if they don't help them, that kind of resource or benefit that they are getting is cut off. That means that their cases on India needing protection and all is clashed outright. Panel, why is the alliance bad for India? Panel, we tell you that our first case is built on sovereignty, which our opening did a very good job on that. A brief extension. We tell you that allying with a country will take away India's sovereignty. How is that true? They are bounded by these treaties to follow and do what they are expected to do by the premises of this treaty, right? A case scenario. Ghana. Ghana is facing a lot of issues affecting LGBTQ because of its alliance with the USA. Supposing that Ghana wasn't having any alliance with the USA, they wouldn't have that incentive to even think about accepting it if it goes against their culture. Now, panel, note that India is a very consecutive country. I'm taking my 5 minutes. India is a very consecutive country, meaning that they hold their sovereignty up to a higher esteem, right? So in cases where they align with these Western or superpowers, it means that they are bounded by a certain form of treaty to do certain things, like accepting certain things like LGBT, which may be imposed on them. We think that is something that India is hardly trying to avoid, since they are so consecutive, right? No, one way or the other. If India allies with the country, certain acts may be imposed on them, which India doesn't necessarily want here. Our impact is very simple. Impact is based on choice system. How is choice being the impact of sovereignty, right? Panel, choicism is when an entity have the power to opt in and opt out. In this case, where they have accepted or signed treaties with these countries, it gets to a point that they don't have the choice to choose. How is that true? In cases these superpowers go into wars, it means that India in of itself is forced to bring in its soldiers to fight against those wars. We think that is very bad because you don't give them the choice to choose whether they want to or not. Case scenario, if USA goes into war right now, Ghana is bounded by a treaty or former alliance to provide support to this country. That is what escalated the world wars, and that's something that India doesn't want to find itself in here. A second case is built on irreparable harms. How is that true? We tell you our case scenario on wars here. India will be expected to send in troops to help resolve these problems, right? 2, India will lose its cooperation with certain countries, of which OO did a good job in analyzing that to you, right? Extensions. We tell you that India cooperates with all countries freely with the non-alliance, right? Should in cases they allow with a certain country, let's take for instance Russia, this causes India to probably lose its cooperation with USA. How is that true? Because USA and Russia doesn't click. It means that if you allow with a country, your cooperation with a country is at stake. That is something India doesn't want because it's a benefit greatly from these countries, right? I'll take you.
Yeah, so you see they will still have them because they get natural resources. They can get this from Africa. They can get this from Europe. That's the best solution. They won't go their business to they have less expensive options that they are going for. They give you a time to them.
Panel. Notice how even though USA is exploiting Ghana, they are still, one way or the other, going to help India because of these benefits that we showed to you, right? And I take case on exploitation, which is a direct clash to these people's case. How is that? We tell you that these superpowers, before they form an alliance, they make sure they get something from you. Meaning that they exploit. They just come and form alliance with a developing country because they feel it's fancy enough to form alliance with them. They need something from them. They exploit them at that expense, right? In case scenario, our country Ghana faces a lot of exploitation by other countries because of this alliance. How is that true? The alliance causes them to trade on lower grounds because after all, those superpowers are helping them. This means that if you are selling your goods for 2,500 per bar, you are supposed to sell it at 2,000 per bar because after all, they are helping you. So in case you don't sell it at that lower grounds with them, they may choose to take away certain benefits that they are bringing to you, which already you have put yourself inside, which is detrimental to you. We tell you that India can choose the prices as to what they want to sell their things because they don't form an alliance with anybody, right? Even if they form this alliance, we think that's very bad for the country, right? Case scenario, Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine has an alliance with USA. The war is still going on. If you haven't seen any cases whereby USA has jumped inside the war and literally solved it, right? We think India doesn't benefit India in any way. With this, we say votes. CG.
Thank you very much, Member of Government. The House recognized. The House recognized. Gav Wave.
Hello? Okay, cool. Beginning in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so panel. Okay. Okay, so panel, I'm going to begin my speech by directly engaging the last thing you get from the member from this side. We think that the reason Ukraine still stands a chance against a huge monstrosity or a huge country like Russia is actually because of the alliance or alignment they have with the United States. They, in their last side of their speech, have proven why it is extremely important for India to actually take this step, right? The clash that, or the predominant clash that exists in the opening half, on which side gets more benefits over harms. Why does side CG gets those main benefits over harms, right? We think that on the issue of exploitation, that is gradually or actually explored by all teams in the room, right? Ensures that all has considered the fact that India is actually being actively exploited by playing both sides, right? By doing that thing. So in a world where we are actually both going to experience the harms of exploitation, and by aligning ourselves with them, we ensure that even if the exploitation happens, we are able to gain due benefits that are going to greatly outweigh what we would have gotten if we were standing alone. Then it is better for us to incur this minimal harm in order to ensure that the impending doom of war can be curtailed and solved, right? Our stance, they want us to show our stance clearly. Our stance is this: we are supposed to show why an alignment is in the best interest of India, and we are going to engage you on directly why, right? We think that by directly aligning, we get two things. One, we are assured of not just the trade benefits in the cooperation, but we are able to ensure the military intervention, etc., that we would get from them, right? They have to show us why it is not important for a country like India, which is actually having war knocking on their doorsteps, does not need extra help and extra technical expertise from countries who are obviously having the capacity to help them, right? On Ghana and what of that, and Ghana's alignment, we think that Ghana is not aligned with anybody specifically. It's mainly corporations, bilateral corporations and multilateral corporations. Even if Ghana is aligned, if we buy that argument, that means that if we are in trouble, we can wait, or we can be expectant of help from the United States. That is good for us in of itself. On the exploitation, we show you that they are going to exploit us either way. It's better we get the benefits. On India's sovereignty and why it is under threat, right? We think that at a point where a country has imminent conflict, so this is how it looks like, right? I'll go into our extension to explain this thing. The sole reason India should do this alignment, that is why we are different from our opening, and that is why we place over them, right? We think that the border war with China currently in India is the reason we should do this. On the various blocks, right, China is directly affiliated with the East. That's countries like Russia, Muslim countries, etc. What that means that you actually have two options: align with the West or align with the East. Where the East has actively shown incentive to China to show you that they do not have your best interest at heart, they are not going to help you, the most laudable explanation or option available to you is to turn readily to the side that is going to help you and give you benefits, right? China has direct ties against the West. That means it is more incentive for the West to actually help you, because they have a sole incentive to do so because of your shared or mutual dislike of the country that is China, right? We think that by aligning with the West, we are able to help more minorities on human rights issues, especially because the West values or puts a lot of priorities on these kinds of issues, right? In a world that is actually going to benefit the citizens of India, we think that is good, right? It's better to get somebody to look out for you, a country that is obviously having a strong military might, military power, instead of standing alone on your own, right? Engaging close in opposition on how they can still gain benefits, right? On their protection arguments. We think that the harm or the benefits India gives to the United States, etc., are benefits they can get from other countries, especially countries in Africa, at a much cheaper rate, where you haven't given the West incentive to help you. Why do you think suddenly? Because when the West needs your help in a form of alignment, you did not give them. You decided to stay alone and be neutral. Where you are needing help right now, why should they help you? That is not automatic, right? When India is not the sole provider of these resources, it will not happen. On the second thing, on the changes in culture, they didn't show us why the protection of a culture outweighs the continued existence of a country and the peace that will exist in them. We think that when worst case comes to worst, having some small tweaks to our culture is a small harm to bear compared to when China is actually going to actively invade and destroy our cities. In that case, the people who are even going to be practicing these cultures are not going to be existent. So the culture they want to protect so much would be lost. And we think that is terrible for them, right? On exploitation, we show you how the exploitation happens either way. Opening. Panel. Out of order. Panel, regardless, we think that this is a thing. Times have changed. China is a rapidly growing superpower. That means that the powers they have and the mights they have are not things India can compete with. In a world where we have seen that the West, another active superpower, is actively involved with the stopping of China, it is better to align ourselves with them and to gain the undue benefits that they can give us, and that is what we get, right? On opening opposition, their biggest harm is on the harms that are on countries dependent on India. We think that those harms that they talk about will still exist, especially when these wars go through, right? What it will mean is that the harm that it is going to have on the countries dependent on India are actually going to be in twofold and very, very dangerous and terrible for them, right? On their issue on the weighing of sovereignty and why we actually achieve sovereignty better. Our world looks like, with the way things are looking in India, we get backing from proper superpowers. We ensure that we can fight, we stand a fighting chance and protect the sovereignty of our country. Their world looks like these conflicts actively occurring. So remember, when there is a war or when there is a conflict, your sovereignty as a nation has already been impacted. It has already been destroyed because another nation is going against your rights of existence and in border tensions, right? In a world where this exists and we are able to preserve our sovereignty, we think it is better to buy closing up.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. The House now recognizes the closing word.
I start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, before I even make any case, let me bring this clarity. She's a whip, which means she's not supposed to bring any external case outside what her member has brought. Her member came to analyze harms. On the issue of exploitation that you brought, it's a new case. We can't take it on that regard, and so therefore, you don't even need to credit them on that. But let's even take the case where they brought issues of harms, right? What they didn't do from their opening is that their opening showed how the trade and how the alliances actually helps them in the long run. They argue harms. Let's tackle those harms, and let's show you how those harms will not necessarily exist, which means every case they've brought in the long run is not going to stand to this debate. They are fought. Let's go into that. So panel, first of all, on the issues of harm, they make mention of a lot of things which I would like to engage, because my opening did a lot of work. She gave you reasons and all that. Let me even go into rebuttals straight away. One, they spoke about
these corporations are going to lead to levels of exploitation, right? Let me give you analysis as to how that is wrong, right? First rule of responses, the nature of corporations, right? We think that one, corporations do not just exist that I wake up and come and take something from you because I like it, right? It is this: if I see that your country has something I want, I bring something to the table, I bring it out, then we agree and we cooperate, right? She analyzes to you how resources in India, in terms of human resources, actually exist. There are tech guys there, so I bring those people to you. You are USA, you need those people, which means that we are going to put something in 10 to get it, right? Where is the exploitation coming from? Two, on the issue of BRICS, right? BRICS is not a cooperation, or it's not even an alliance. BRICS is a group of countries coming together to help themselves economically, which means that India brings something, Russia brings something, India brings something, Russia brings something, Brazil brings something, South Africa brings something. At the point in time where you are saying exploitation, how does that exist if all of them are coming together to help themselves? So BRICS is in the way that, one, if I help you, you are supposed to develop your economy. You help me, I develop my economy, because we are all growing together in that large. That's not an alliance. That's an economic cooperation to help ourselves grow. That's different from an alliance, which means the issue of exploitation is down. Argument one down. Let's go to the next one. Good. Now they talk about border conflicts, right? Yes, they made mention of the fact that border conflicts exist between China and India, right? Let's argue something here. Panel, they've not shown the degree or the level of magnitude this war has caused India. It is a minimal thing. The justification they give is 8 soldiers. Panel, 8 soldiers. When we are talking about harms, we count certain numbers. Those numbers don't exist because 8 soldiers doesn't really cut it, right? But even let's go on. Why China will not want to aggravate this kind of conflict is, one, because of their cooperation with India in terms of BRICS. They have economic incentive. They are not going to do that against them. So the conflict you are going to see is minimal. That's why they highlighted it so small. And even we are not hearing it because it is not a big thing. If it was a big thing, we would have heard about it. We would have seen that it's very aggravating and causing India problems. They know they cannot escalate the issue. And so therefore, whatever they've said right now, please, case argument 2 is fourth. Argument 2 is down. You are seeing why they are fourth. Let's continue. India has poor people. Panel, we think that even on our side is an incentive to develop our country, right? Why do we say this is so? Through these economic cooperations we have, right, India has been able to secure themselves economically, which means in the long run, they are helping their people to develop themselves. They are helping their people to get better and more economic stability. Why? Now people are going to see that if I'm a tech guy, I'm usually going to get more money. So education in that front is going to develop them more. They are going to get more money to stabilize themselves, right? In the form of alliances, right? Arafina analyzes to you how, one, there will be a reason for them to take something from them because alliances are based on treaties, meaning that in, for example, Ghana and USA, right, issues of debts exist, issues of, let's say, problems between African developing countries and power countries, right? They do something like benevolence cooperations. Why? I take and help you in your small debts and everything you have. That becomes an alliance between you and me. You have a reason and incentive to help me because you are aligned with me. I have something, I have a leverage over you. But in cooperations, there's no leverage. You have, I have. We bring together, and that's the difference here. So at the point where you say India has poor people, that is even more justified why they will engage in economic cooperations and not alliances, because they cannot risk the people being continued to be poor. That's why India is pushing for economic development because of the poverty. Case 3, argument 3, down. Issues of the thing flaring up, right? They come to argue that the problem with India is that the conflicts will flare up. Panel, let's note this thing. The OO comes to tell you that the only reason why India right now currently has no conflict, what they argue is a minor conflict and doesn't exist. We're talking about major conflict that exists, i.e. Russia, Ukraine, right? The reason why those things don't exist is because they don't have alliances with all other countries. The only thing they have is economic cooperations and incentives with them, which means that the issues, for example, Ukraine decided to align with the USA. Russia saw it as a threat and they decided to take them down on it. If India does that, that is the same thing that's going to happen to them. China and all those other countries will come and attack them, and there will be, you see, the issues of poverty will continue to implode in their world, right? The issues of economic struggle will implode in their people to run down and do analysis. So because of that, we see that even the issues of flaring up exist in their world more than ours. So you see, right now, literally all the things they said on harms does not exist in status quo right now. We beat them on that, and we even engage on the open because they talk about trade. Let's even look at what they say about trade, ignoring all those factors. Now we just say non-alignment does not only include trade. Because of your political ties and because of your allyships, right? right? They will in turn affect your economy. That's why she analyzed you in World War I, how Germany was affected. Their economy was brought down, geopolitical tensions came, their entire framework and structure, identity as a country was brought down, all because of alliances. So this means that this is what's going to happen to India in the long run if these things happen. So the allies are always directly affected by the actions of their major allies, right? So proxy wars, you send your ally to go and fight for you, you don't go and fight. So if these countries are developing, you say India is poor, so it's going to risk that and go for all these things. You are really being unreasonable here saying that we should go and do these things. These are reasons why India in the past and now don't want to go into these things because of the nature of these alliances. They are very threatful. In the occurrence of a third world war, India cannot even survive, and you are cannot going to risk that, right? So we argue that in today's debate. They also talk about culture. Panel, let's note that India's culture is basic to their fundamental development as a country. It forms their identity. That's why they are a conservative state. Two, their culture is very beautiful. That's why people come there on tourism. So you can come and see those things and see how it develops, right? At the point where you erode those things because you include non-alliances, right? They change the entire framework of the country. You come and change some of the cultures. You come and change some of their way of life. As she said to you, because Ghana is aligning with certain countries, the pressures on them to even implore this LGBTQ thing, right? It even happens. So if it happens to India too, the same thing will happen. Certain ideologies will have to be imprinted in India, and it will implode and it will destroy their culture. They cannot take that in today's debate. So panel, on the issue of their cases, right? They argue on trade. We show you how trade still exists in status quo, and it will be worse on their side if they go for it. They argue on arms. We show you how the arms don't exist on our side, and they are worse on their side. We win today's debate. Over our opening, we give extensive analysis, and we show more solutions. So we win today's debate. We are first, second, third, and fourth. Do that right, and let's go.
Thank you very much, speakers. So we'll call you in. We'll call you back in 15 minutes.
Once everything's perfectly organized, I'll start working on my thesis.
Grammarly will ensure you feel
on how we have been respectful to each other in terms of the teams and the judges. So far, we commend you on that. But then we felt largely there was not much on the acceptance and the taking of POIs. We urge speakers to make sure that going forward you make deliberate attempts to pick and ask POIs as at when you need them. So after heated and then close call deliberation, rankings are as follows. OG from first to fourth. OG on a 2-1 split, CO, OO, and CG. From first to fourth. OG, 2-1 split, CO, OO, and then CG. Right. So let's start from the OA with OG and why OG wins today's debate. We think that basically this debate is a belief motion, right? That means then that anything that you claim within the confines of this debate, you would have to analyze and mechanize them correctly. You cannot prophesy in a belief motion, right? So the panel felt that on the part as fulfillment of roles from OG, they did well on that in that particular regard. But then that is not exactly the reason why they were first. They were first because of the argumentation and the persuasion level that they had with us, right? So one was that there was an establishment of a burden within the debate, which is status quo. India is not aligned with any country, right? So what it means then is that if there is a motion that says India should forgo that principle, op teams are supposed to defend status quo. That is the burden on op team. Graph teams are supposed to prove why status quo is not working, and so they would move on and then take it away whichever way they want it. So how does OG engage this burden in that particular regard? One, they establish a world where there is an increasing economic recession due to one, the harm that has come aftermath COVID, but also most importantly,